Hey guys, Dave Keller here with Market Misbehavior, back home in Redmond, Washington after a week in New York last week. Good to be home. Um, I did a webcast yesterday morning about routines and about investor routines and how you approach the trading day, and the habits that you build over time, and how you spend that really important morning coffee stretch of time. Right, you get your cup of coffee, you sit down. What do you do? And the videos on YouTube that kind of describes my morning coffee routine in detail. But one of the key takeaways I had in the Q&A session afterwards was, um, where the order of things is really, really important, right? And I've written a lot about the first thing in the morning. What's the very first thing you look at? And I've talked about how for a long-term investor, I find a lot of people look at very short-term information first. And that's kind of flip-flopped, right? So if you're a long-term investor, you should be looking at long-term data, the long-term trend in markets. So for me, that's a 7-year weekly chart of the S&P 500, because that's how I want to start. That's where I want my brain to focus before I go on and sort of understand what else is happening. But I was asked in particular about your portfolio and where that should be in the order. I find a lot of people, the first thing you get your cup of coffee, you fire up the computer, you start looking at things. There's this great temptation to look at your holdings, or if you manage others' money, your client's portfolio, your institutional portfolio, right? Start with that and just see where you're at, and then start to analyze other things. And I would argue strongly that your portfolio should actually be at the end of the process, right? Because what happens is one of the worst biases, or most common biases, is confirmation bias, where you get a certain opinion, I'm bullish or I'm bearish, and then you start looking at information and you assign greater weight to data that supports your preconceived conclusion, and you mentally push away things that disagree with or don't validate your conclusion. As a result, you look at your portfolio, you have a certain point of view, and then you're just gathering data to support what you've already decided to do, and that is not a great way to invest. What you want to do is start looking at the information, start gathering data, right? So for me, it's looking at a weekly chart of the S&P, then a daily chart of the S&P, and then along through other things, other markets, other global exchanges, other asset classes, looking at sectors, looking at industries, looking at stocks, and sort of go through this whole series of steps. And after all of that, at the very end is when I start looking at a portfolio, because the first question you want to ask is, what does the market look like? What is my market perspective? What is my outlook? What do I think I see? Then the second question should be, how am I positioned relative to that outlook? So gather a bunch of information. Overall, I feel like the market is overextended, probably has limited upside. Let's just say hypothetically at this point, which happens to agree with what I'm seeing technically, by the way. So then you look at your portfolio and say, okay, if this is what I'm seeing on the charts or with all the information I'm gathering, am I positioned for that outcome or for that probabilistic outcome? And if so, then great. If not, what changes do I want to start to make to bring my portfolio more in line with my perspective, with my feeling on the markets? And so by doing it that way, you are first gathering information in an unbiased format, and then comparing your positioning back to that initial assessment. So my recommendation for you this week is to think about when you look at your portfolio, and make sure you do it later in your process, every day, every morning. Don't start with it, because it's going to set you up for failure in terms of your ability to gather information with limited bias. If this sort of thinking about investment decision making routines and habits is of interest to you, I hope you'll subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the little bell to alert yourself when I post a new video, and have a great day.